And welcome back to Washington Commanders Insider. Today, we are looking at an NFL draft prospect on the defensive side of the ball that I certainly would be excited for if the Washington Commanders could get him. We're also going to be looking at the Trey Hendrickson update and just if there's any more traction around a possible trade there. And so, before we go ahead and jump into the content for today, first wanted to remind you to go ahead and slam on that subscribe button. It would mean a lot to us here at Washington Commanders Insider as we try to reach our season's goal. And so in exchange for that subscribe, we are going to continue to give you nothing but Washington Commanders news updates and everything surrounding the Washington Commanders. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump into the content for today. And let's start with Trey Hendrickson and just is there any more updates here? And so initially, there is not too much noise going on around Trey Hendrickson. I still do believe that, look, if he is available at the right price, the Washington Commanders would certainly go out and certainly get him. There is a lot of articles that suggest the Washington Commanders would be aggressive in going out and getting him. I totally agree that if you can get him over, I think he is going to be an impact player for the Washington Commanders. It's just all about Adam Peters making a move that is going to make sense for the Washington Commanders because you don't want to just bring in, another veteran player and you're also giving up, your future because that's going to be huge when you're talking about maximizing the window with Jaden Daniels. I think a lot of times, we're looking at, okay, he's on the rookie contract and things like that, but you also have to start to look at, are there other maybe defensive players that you can bring in on a defensive contract or on the defensive side of the ball, that have a rookie contract that you can build with as well? And I think that this particular draft, a draft in which all the NFL teams own their first round pick. I think that that's the first time that this has happened in quite some time. And this is a draft, really, I think it's defensively, it's rich. I think you can go out and you can get a defensive player in this draft that can help your football team. And so hopefully whatever happens, we trust in Adam Peters to make the right decision here. And so that leads me to the next point here. And we are talking about, look, at an NFL draft prospect that I think if he is available at pick 29, I must say that the Washington Commanders have got to go out and get him. And so this comes from an article that is on commanders.com. And this is looking at mock drafts, and this is the 5.0 version. This came out a couple days ago. And within this article, you have 12 different writers, and they're from different sources. So we've done this before, but it can be from Sports Illustrated, CBS, Pro Football Focus. I'm just naming, just a couple major sites here that cover the NFL. And so they have players that are linked to the Washington Commanders. And so they're saying, okay, I think the Commanders take this person. I think they take that person. So, okay. So out of the 12 writers, 4 picked that they would take Donovan Izaraku. And so that is a player that we talked about before. So Donovan Izaraku is a player that the Washington Commanders have been linked to. If you don't remember him, he's a 2024 ACC Player of the Year. He has 16 and a half sacks, which was second in the nation. I've talked about just his speed, his explosion, and he's also got a great ability to tackle, and he's a versatile rusher. So he could be a person that stands. He also can be a player that can get his hand in the dirt and rush that way. He has a very nice wide technique. I think that there's a lot of things to like around Izaraku. And so he was a player that was linked to the Washington Commanders. And there's also the link of James Pierce Jr., which is a player that that is no new news. He did have a very good combine out of the University of Tennessee. And in fact, I think he had maybe one of the best. And one of the writers was talking about how he had 107 pressures, 21 sacks over his 2 years there in the SEC. And so, look, he's got a ton of upside. But there was one writer at the end, and they mentioned that the Washington Commanders might take Walter Nolan, defensive tackle out of Ole Miss. And I must say, if this young man is available, the Washington Commanders have got to get this guy. I mean, he looks like he could be a day one starter. I mean, just day one. When you look at his tape, immediately you think, okay, this guy is a serious disruptor. And so this is exactly the last line. If you go to NFL Draft Buzz, what it says, don't be surprised if Nolen develops into one of the NFL's premier interior defensive linemen by his second contract. That's how good he is. And so, in talking about how good that Nolen is, look, as far as being a disruptor, I mean, he literally is pushing players back into the quarterback's lap. So you love that. It's the physicality that he plays with. He might be one of the most physical players that I've seen at the line of scrimmage in this draft. He had 14 tackles for a loss, and he had 6.5 sacks. And so just as far as being a disruptor with his power, he can get home to the quarterback. There were several times he got to the running back as well. So another thing that I love about him is his ability to get through the trash. And so he's a guy that it could be people hanging off of him or whatever, and he's just pushing, and he can find that ball carrier or he can find the quarterback. And so that is another thing that you love about him, because quarterbacks, as they sense pressure and they're trying to get out of there, you have somebody that's hanging on you. And so for you to be able to kind of, direct and kind of get to where you need to go to, I think that is huge when you're talking about just fighting your way through the trenches. And then I think another thing that I love about him is just the speed that he displays, and he's got a lot more agility than what he really shows, because his frame at this point, he's 6'3", 305 pounds, but man, he can really move. And I think that he's going to be a serious problem if you are putting him into like a lot of stunts and things like that. Like, I think he is going to just terrorize the offensive line that way. In fact, in his college days, man, he progressively got better. He went from starting in Texas A&M for 2 seasons, went to Ole Miss, but man, he got better each year. His total tackle rates went up from 29 all the way up to 48. His assist went up from 12 all the way to 22. And then when it came down to sacks, look, he went from 1 sack all the way up to 4 sacks by the time he got to his second season in Texas A&M. And then he finished with 6.5 sacks in 2024. So that is terrific production, for this player that has played 3 seasons. And man, there is a lot to like here. If he falls to the Washington Commanders, like, I think that you have to take him. I know that I've been talking about, just maybe obviously upgrading the edge. That's something that we need. And I've said this before too, that I feel like the Washington Commanders have got enough right now on the defensive line, and they're kind of just trying to do something where maybe they're just throwing multiple bodies out there on the defensive end. They're going to try to come with a more versatile look and just try to really give the offense a lot of fits this way. But I just think that you throw this guy in here, and I mean, I think he's an every down type of player. And I think, like I said, he's a day one starter, great size, great strength. And I think that you love the fact that he can play a 0 to 5 technique, which means that he can pretty much be versatile at the defensive tackle position. I mean, you can line him up in several different ways, and he's going to be able to get it done. He's going to be outstanding as far as a bull rusher is concerned. You love that. So this guy is incredible. I think the weaknesses that they have listed for him is at times he loses the hand fight, so to speak. And so, he's got to get a lot better with that. And then also too, I guess he gets high with his pad level sometimes. So sometimes he comes a little bit too much up out of the stance when he's coming to attack and stuff like that. And so these are things that he's got to get better at. But to say that he's a day one starter and to say that he could have the possibility to fall down to the Commanders, I think that would be a no-brainer, that you'd have to take him. And looking at CBS.com, I think he's the second defensive lineman on the entire board. I think the only one that's ahead of him is Mason Graham of Michigan. And so this is a player that I would certainly love the Washington Commanders to take. I think if you get a player like this, like I said before, I get the shades of an Aaron Donald. And I think about how Aaron Donald was able to really disrupt the Bengals in that Super Bowl. And I think he was key for the Rams winning that Super Bowl. And we saw just in this last Super Bowl what happens if you have somebody that can disrupt an offense. And so, anyway, let me know in the comments, do you think the Washington Commanders should absolutely take Walter Nolan if he is available, or do you think that they go a different direction in the first round? I'd love to hear your thoughts. And then with Trey Hendrickson, do you think that, yes, the Washington Commanders should very much still be in the play for Trey Hendrickson? Do you think that they should give up a lot of draft capital to get him? I think that that's really the bigger question. So anyway, let me know in the comments. And as we always say, go Commanders. I will see you on the next one. All right. Peace.